Spring has sprung. Let's take a deep breath and start the meeting. Good evening. I am Allison Wright, Mayor Pro Tem, presiding over the meeting for Mayor Denson tonight. Time for citizen input. If you wish to address the Mayor and Commission on any item.
Roll call.
Do we have to have that?
I'm sorry. I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem.
Now I got to start over. I'm just kidding.
Jerry just wanted to say Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
For the item listed below on the consent agenda, please go to the podium, state your name and address. Rules of the commission state that a citizen may speak once during the following portion of the agenda for up to 3 minutes with a 30-second reminder at 2.5 minutes. And the lights will be going here from the clerk of the commission. Before we do citizen input, I'm sorry, I meant to bring forward that we have additional appointments to our SPLOST 2011 Oversight Committee. And this will be brought forward to be put in the official record at the April 3rd meeting, but we wanted to go ahead and announce those appointments tonight so that that committee can get together, have a quorum, and proceed with their work. District 4 will be Joel Katz, District 5, Amy Andrews, District 6, Dennis Hopper, and District 9, Lee Smith. We appreciate everybody's commitment to helping our community with the oversight and the time commitment that these people have committed to. We really appreciate that. Okay, so we're to the consent agenda, the items 1, 2, and 3. Does anybody want to come and give us 3 minutes of their time for those 3 items? And you'll state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Mimi Elliott Gower, 185 Hillcrest Avenue, 30606. And I'm speaking in regards to, I think, agenda item number 3, which is the parking permit. And just wanted to start out by saying that while we're very grateful to have this process for permit parking, also sorry that it had to come to that, and just wanted to share that our neighborhood worked quite a bit, we felt like, in outreach with the hospital and the local businesses that impact the parking for neighbors, and reached out to try to come to a compromise and look at solutions. And even my 18-year-old daughter said, well, this is silly, and she went down to the doctor's office and said, can't we, work this out? And we were unable to reach a compromise, and that's what kind of brought us to having to look at permit parking. You always hate to have extra, I think, steps. It's nice when everybody can just park and get along, and we're just sorry that that didn't happen, and grateful for the process that will allow for safe and adequate parking for neighbors in Cobb.
Okay, thank you, Mimi.
Hi, my name is Teresa Cullen. I live at 731 Cobb. And I want to just spend a couple of minutes telling you about an incident that happened about a month ago. As I pull out of my driveway, Dr. Lockman's office is catty corner across the street from me. I can see left and right, and I proceeded to turn to go up to Millage. And at that exact moment, a patient of Dr. Lockman's decided he can see neither left or right because cars are blocking his vision. He pulls out fast, I guess, to make a safe and quick exit. And we met maybe 5 feet from head-on injury. And we just looked at each other like, whoa, that was amazing. So it's not a matter of we don't like a lot of cars on our street because it detracts from our beautiful houses or the snobham image that we seem to be guilty of at points. It has nothing to do with that. My next door neighbors are in their 80s, and I fear for their lives pulling out. It's extremely dangerous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your input. And we also have yellow curbing that can be done to the left and the right of driveways. That can be turned in too, so that parking is not too close to driveways. I don't know if that solves some of the other coming and going. Anyone else?
Yeah, just quickly, my name's Margie Spalding. I live at 749 Cobb. And this has kind of evolved over the last few years. It turned out that people from some of the offices or the hospital began parking on the street for 8-hour shifts. And then patients noticed it, and there'll be days when cars are on both sides of the street, which would mean a fire truck couldn't get through. you know, that it's really not wide enough. So it's evolved over time, and we've tried to work, but it just hasn't worked. So we're asking for this. Thank you.
And that's why the process is here. Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Catherine Downs, and I'm at 738 Cobb Street. We do love the hospital being there. We literally bought our house from the hospital, and they do very good outreach with us in terms of the neighborhood. And they started charging for parking, and then that, unfortunately, some people can't pay that, and so then they look for free parking. So it makes sense that these people are looking for free places to park. However, yes, you're right. There are some yellow curbs that need to be repainted, but it's so many more people than that that it extends down blocks and blocks, and like Margie said, on both sides, so that when I'm coming out of my driveway, if there was some yellow, that'd be good. But it's also people that are bicyclists who are going down the street, and I can't see them when I pull out of my driveway because of the cars. People with strollers. It is a very dangerous situation. And my child also, and I have a high car, she couldn't see around one of the cars that was parked there, and she almost got hit. So I just want to reiterate that it is, number one, it's a safety issue. And then number two, it is frustrating sometimes when some business people haven't allocated enough parking for their business, for their employees, so they're parking on our street too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen input for items 1, 2, or 3? Okay. Come behind the rail. Comments? I guess, does anybody, since they're consent, we'll just leave them all on there?
I'll take 3 off just for a quick comment.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to thank you ladies for coming, and thank you for reaching out. I've heard from most of these ladies a couple times over the past couple years, and our permit parking program was pretty limited up until recently. There was just a set list of streets that were allowed to go through this program, and we revisited it through the Government Operations Committee, and we came up with criteria. So any street that meets certain criteria can go through this program, and it's definitely necessary in Cobb and Hill and Hillcrest, and probably a couple other streets in that vicinity. I drove down Cobb Street just today, and it was lined on both sides with cars. You know, you had to creep through in my tiny little Honda, and I've walked through it and dodged between the cars. So I'm grateful that this is coming forward. You know, when we have our neighborhoods right up against our businesses, sometimes we need to make some extra rules to make sure that everything flows as smoothly as possible, and I hope things get a lot better over there. I'm sure they will.
And so that'll stay on the consent agenda, so that can give the neighbors confidence that we are supportive of it as well. Okay. All right, so citizens input. This is our second opportunity for that, and this will be on items 4 through 8, and the same process for the 3 minutes. Anybody who wants to speak to that or want to leave because their topic is done is fine too.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Commission. I was going to say hello, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. I am Diane Elizabeth Dunstan, MD, medical doctor, proud to be here tonight. And I am here to speak on, I believe, item number 6. That's the allocation for community development block grant funds. I have a lot to say, but I have 3 minutes. And it is my goal to see the commission and the next mayor be really responsive to the people of this community. 20 plus years ago, I came to this commission and said I would never, not this commission, actually it looked a little different. I had a few more people who kind of looked like me, and many who understood what I was trying to do. I would never ask you for more than I am willing to give. And I think that you saw the perfect example of why I decided I needed to be here tonight and not in Aiken, South Carolina, teaching my residents and medical students from Augusta and taking care of the sweet children in Aiken who need me now. Dr. Shanice Allen, product of Athens-Clarke County. Well-trained, well-suited. I am trying to convince the children and the elders in our community that hope is not lost. But I appeal to you, look deep in what you do. None of us are all right, none of us are all wrong, but you will be held accountable, and so will I in the end. So when you sit and you think and you say what you want for the entire community, this isn't by accident. And when we don't know our past, we're going to repeat it. I have not forgotten my past. I am the legacy descendant of slaves. My ancestors came over here on a slave ship. There was a time when I couldn't come up here and speak, but my parents and instilled in me, which I have instilled in these children. That's why I do what I do. I need to stop. My 3 minutes up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Innovative health care. You all do the right thing.
Any other citizen input on items 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8? Okay, we're ready to go behind the rail. Does anybody have any questions or comments on number 4? The red light camera program.
I do. I have some.
Okay, Chair. Commissioner Dickerson, sorry.
I answered all of it. So I guess I'm kind of curious, and maybe I missed it, but we removed an intersection camera at Lexington, Gaines, and Cherokee because there was a significant reduction in accidents. The data we have for West Broad and Alps, it looks like the citations only go through 2011. We don't have more current data. I mean, we've got a mean in under facts and issues number 2, or actually facts and issues number 1, the last paragraph. It talks about how there's been sustained reductions in crashes with a mean of 32.6 crashes. I'm not quite sure what that means in the grand scheme, and no pun intended, what that means in the grand scheme of things. Is 32.6 good, bad, indifferent in the grand scheme of intersection crashes? What are we to sort of take away from that? I guess I'm wondering that light has been in place since 2007. Mm-hmm. The other one was in place, I'm not sure how early. I don't think it said when Lexington Road went in, but it finished in 2011. It was pulled. So why pull that one and not pull West Broad? What are we looking at? I mean, can we get a little bit of more information about why we wouldn't want to pull that and put it somewhere else? I mean, there are other intersections that we could use without having to upgrade this one. I mean, justification for why would be good to understand.
Sure. Well, just a quick, the reason why they did the through 2011, yes, we have more recent data. I think they were trying to show the 5 years after the installation what the impact was. The reason I was told it was removed is because it pretty much had diminished to a point to where we did not need to continue the operations there. Now, I don't know the last time.
You're talking about Lexington?
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess my question is, we saw this, if I'm reading this right, this was the West Broad Alps Road intersection, under Facts and Issues 1.
Right.
And it stops in 2011, and then they show the 5-year crash analysis prior to and after we put it in. So my question is, where is it since that point? Where is it? And all I got is a mean of 32.6 crashes, and I don't know in relation to was it 100? I mean, like, is that what do we hope it is? Like, what should it be?
The
Should it be
goals.
10? Should it be, I mean, hopefully 0, but like, how is that relative, you know, to the number, and how does that work out in the number of violations, I guess? So under, facts and issues 1, hang on, I made a note. 1, 2, citation. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of curious if there aren't other intersections where we have concern that there are crashes, and I don't know, because this doesn't tell us if there are. It just says that we have the ability to put them in if they're, you know, if it's deemed that there are, where is it under? Oh, I saw it.
Sure,
Anyway, I'm just kind of curious if it makes sense to keep it there. I mean, and
if there's
and
another
upgrade it.
intersection that may have,
Yeah, I mean, would we want to upgrade this one, or do we feel comfortable where we're at a good point where we could let it go and we could put it somewhere, we could put new equipment somewhere else?
okay. I'll get you that information.
Okay.
My personal experience is the camera picture's pretty good there a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very good deterrent for those of us who have disregard for the red light. I learned my lesson.
I'll lose your husband.
Anybody else have any comments on this? We want to keep it off the consent agenda, Sharon, till you get your answers?
I would ask
Okay.
you would, please.
Okay. All right. Then that moves us to item number 5, the 800 megahertz radio system upgrade agreement. Does anybody have any questions and any clarification on this one? Can we put it on
Yeah,
consent?
I would like to hear, if Blaine's prepared, I read all this, I understood what it said, but these payments are just huge. So we're getting hardware and software upgrades. Do we pay a software license fee?
We pay a maintenance agreement with the company that I think includes the software.
If we're paying a maintenance agreement, then why do we need to pay over $175 and increasing $1,000 per year for hardware and software upgrades? The software license agreement should include upgrades.
Well, I'm sorry. The maintenance, let me restate that. The maintenance agreement only covers hardware repairs, but
Okay.
not the software or hardware upgrades.
Okay.
And this is, and I'll just share this with you.
Yeah.
This is a 10-year, I mean, this was about a $10 million project to install this system. And really, we already had some of the infrastructure in place. We just went from analog to digital. The reason I bring that up, and I have been part of, we installed one in a previous jurisdiction that I was in. And what happened here is what we would foresee is that every 5 years, you know, things change. So you would plan for a one-time upgrade. And what we've, in further talks with Motorola, what we found is that as opposed to just riding the system for 5 years, one-time technology refresh, that we just do it incrementally, we can actually do it a little bit cheaper than once every 5 years and gain the benefit of any efficiencies in the system that may come with the upgrades. And you know, if you do it incrementally along the way, you avoid this future, you know, this big jump that may cost more.
Well, technology doesn't get more expensive, it gets cheaper, so I don't quite see that. Do they say in each of these years what the upgrades will be specifically? Which piece of equipment?
We can give you some more detail. You know, over time, these, again, you imagine that some of these things have a 5-year lifespan, you know, whether it's some of the guts of the system, but I can get you some more specifics on that.
I would appreciate that. I have a difficult time approving something this expensive without understanding what it is we're buying other than hardware and software upgrades. That's, for me, that's a little fluffy, and
Okay.
I am trained in this area, Andy. So my curiosity is pretty intense here. Thank you.
Okay, and also, in the information, it talks about the SPLOST Oversight Committee will be meeting on March 26th on this topic. SPLOST, this is SPLOST 2011 Project 5, and so now that there's enough members to have a quorum, perhaps we can get the minutes from that meeting sent to us so that we can have some insights from that. Can that be sent to us? I don't know, maybe so that we'd have it by April. So that maybe it's not just an update in the agenda report, but we could actually have the minutes. Might that be helpful?
Well, it might be.
But-
I'm not sure they get that deep into the woods. They're just going to validate that this project is compliant with the referendum.
The project statement, yeah.
Commissioner Harrod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So I might have missed this in the agenda report, but I do notice that the year 1 and year 2 payments are the same amount, but for different time periods. And I was wondering, is that a typo, or is that meant to be that way, or?
It is correct. It's getting us, going ahead and getting us on that cycle. They prefer that March update. We're timing this with our fiscal year, so it gets us on the cycle of where we're trying to get to. And it's been worked out through the schedule of payments.
So was, for year 1 and year 2, was it just simply a single payment, and it was just easier mathematically to split that into 2 equal parts, or are we actually really paying more per month for the payment due on 7/1/2018 than the payment due on 3/1/2019?
Well, you know, we've had the system up for a couple of years, so we're doing a little bit of catch up. And so we're behind that. This catches us up with those 2 payments, and we will get the upgrade almost immediately.
Commissioner Neesmith?
So just to be clear about what I'd like to see is, number one, what kind of agreements do we have in place now for software and hardware maintenance and upgrades? And how are these numbers calculated? I mean, they're to the penny. So they're based on something. And I find it odd that they're to the penny, since that's not really the way we sell hardware and software, is regarding pennies. So I'd like to see how these are calculated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would like to point out
Go
one
ahead.
thing that's good about the system that the Mayor and Commission helped to put together, and that is that prior to, in the old format, when we had our analog system, we had our own separate radio system, and the University of Georgia had their own separate radio system. When we went to do this, they had a need to upgrade as well, and what we did is we shared the cost. You know, most of the infrastructure that we had, we were going to pay for anyway. We got some participation from the university, and we both got better coverage, particularly in some of the bigger buildings in town that were an issue for our fire department. And really going forward with the maintenance agreement, since they're subscribers in our system, they pay a portion of the maintenance, which saves the unified government and the taxpayers dollars on the maintenance, and both entities get a better product for public safety. So I think that's worthy of pointing out. And Commissioner Neesmith, we will
Thank you.
get you those answers.
Okay, we're ready to move on to item number 6, FY19 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan, and we have a public hearing on this Tuesday, April 3rd, when we vote on it. Is that right, Jean? Have I had that correct? Does anybody have any questions on the packet or needing more information on that topic?
I have a couple comments.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I met with our Housing and Community Development Director, Deborah Lonan, about this because I did have some concerns and questions about the programs that were selected for some of this funding. And I wanted to just make clear that these are federal funds, and there are very, very specific federal requirements that programs that apply for these funds must adhere to. And if the feds come behind and audit programs that we've awarded funds to and find that they don't necessarily meet those criteria, or their applications are incomplete, or you know, they haven't shown proof of following through on some of their past programs, we could lose all of this money. This is $1.2 million that goes to all kinds of programs throughout the community, vital programs that don't have any other source of funding. So, you know, I was able to see some of these applications and understand more clearly why certain programs were selected for this funding and why others weren't. You know, I know they have a lot of tough decisions to make, and I hope that, from what I understand, we offer a lot of help to these organizations. They are able to come into the Housing and Community Development offices and sit down with one of our staff and help them through the application process, and they follow up and they ask them for more information. So there are opportunities to get these applications in order. I'm hoping maybe we can provide more opportunities. From what I understand, often folks don't show up for some of the information sessions. I think that there was a requirement that they show up this past year. So, you know, there are concerns in the community about programs that don't get the funds and those that do, but there's a pretty, from what I've seen, there's a pretty thorough process, and I saw the applications with my own eyes and recognized the disparities and understand the risk of losing this funding for the entire community. So I hope that, you know, we can work more closely with some of the organizations who haven't been able to meet those requirements and get through that application process. I don't know what else we can do to hold their hands and get them up to speed. But I hope we do whatever we can, so.
And we had that presentation at the, I think it was February 13th work session, and that packet's got the details of the awards and what was asked for and what was accepted. Or what word am I looking for? Recommended, thank you. Is that it? Did you have any questions? Okay. Commissioner Dickerson?
Yeah, I was just wondering, when they don't get selected, is there an outreach from the department to say, we didn't select you and this is why? Do we know, is that sort of the process, or do we just assume they'll come back and ask when they don't find out?
From the work session, I remembered that she had some descriptions of some of them who maybe came to one session and not another. She did give some descriptions, but that wasn't a total review.
I'm talking about, now that we've got a report of what's being recommended, do they get a notification if they're not on the list? You didn't get notified, and the opportunity's there for them to come back and talk to Deborah and her staff about why? I mean, is that sort of the process?
Well, that's always the opportunity. In fact, the folks are encouraged, as they're developing their proposals, to come and sit down with staff to identify maybe what some problematic areas are. You know, and many of the successful applicants take advantage of that. They come to understand what the issues are. But at the end of the day, and it's a hard decision, you know, there's a lot of need in this community, as we all know, and there's only so much money we get from the federal government.
Also, if I might add, there is you know, through this public hearing process, there is a public notification, you know, a public comment period as well. So, you know, once we have our public hearing and this information is public, all that is available to everybody. We have a public comment period, and staff is always available and willing to discuss, you know, the intricacies of the different applications and where they may have been deficient and where they can improve next year and so forth.
And so that information was in the February work session, but yet not necessarily publicly
I mean,
issued.
Yeah, I mean, it was technically public, but, you know, sometimes, you know, applicants may feel better with a, you know, one-on-one meeting, so they can have a better depth of understanding of what those decisions might have been, and staff is always available in order to do that.
Well, I know that our HCD director did meet with board members of one organization that wasn't successful to help walk them through what the issues were as well.
Commissioner Dickerson, is that covering it?
I have one more.
Okay.
So, just to be clear, these programs that are selected for this funding, they're selected by our vision committee, which is what, 20 people, or how many people? I forget how many people are on it. There's 10 or, okay. And there's citizens from all across the community. And that's not a requirement that a citizen committee be involved in this process, correct? That's not one of those federal requirements. That's something we choose to do as a community. From what I understand, other communities, it's just the mayor and the commission that select the projects.
Well, the answer is yes and no, in that the vision committee does play a role in helping to identify the consolidated plan. And I'm not intimately familiar with HUD regulation, but they are fulfilling an important role there. As to the selection or the recommendation of specific projects, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
With 29 applications, I'm glad we have 10
I
citizens
remember-
to be on that committee.
I mean, I
and to
remember
go through
Harry
this.
talking about when they used to, the commission used to select them and what a process that was. And now, you know, that we've removed politics from it theoretically, and it's citizens that are making the major recommendations.
And then we appoint them
Yes.
with our boards, authorities, and commission process to be on the vision committee, if citizens are interested. Any other comments or questions on 8? And again, the public hearing
6.
will be at our voting meeting Tuesday, April 3rd. Okay, moving to number 7, the adoption of the 2018 service delivery strategy for Athens-Clarke County, the city of Winterville, and the town of Bogart. Any questions or clarification? Commissioner Dickerson?
When I went looking for it, it was actually kind of hard to find on the website, because you have to go to planning, then you have to go to the comprehensive plan, and then you can find it, but I don't think the average person would know that, so it might be good to, like, give its own little tab. It's, you know, I know it's part of the comprehensive, you know, plan process, but I had to go looking for it. So it just might be easier for the public if it was on the planning site, like, you know, underneath comp plan or something as a tab or a link. I was kind of curious, why are most all the forms are dated March 8th, 2017? Why would they be dated a year ago?
Well, that's how long staff's got it. Most of this has been compiled a year ago.
Okay.
They've been working on that. We're really focused on meeting our deadline of July 1st, 2018, that the planning staff started about a year and a half ago working on this, and they got all that taken care of well in advance, with the exception of a few things, very few things, with both of the Bogart and Winterville. You know, and obviously we've moved on to getting more involved with the comp plan. So they got what they could done earlier to be working on this other stuff that was waiting on Envision Athens.
So, I mean.
It's all current.
Yeah, it just seems like you'd want to just say, you know, March of this year or something, just for whatever. I did have a couple other questions real quick. I'm trying to find it. There were some, in looking at well, heck, hang on a sec. I'm trying to get it open and I can't find it now. I found it on my computer at home, but I can't find it on this. So on some of so there's pages that obviously, there's a page like on the airport, there's a page on the landfill, there's a page on stormwater. And some of those, I guess I'm kind of curious, and because they were done a while ago, maybe they're not up to date, but like a good example, and this is my area, is page 115. I had a note that said we had 11 years of landfill space. I don't think that the new cells are going to give us 11 years of landfill space. I don't think. Just want to make sure, obviously, that here it is, you know, that it's current.
Sure.
We obviously don't have 11 years right now with what we have. We barely have, you know, a year, I think, left. But,
okay.
And then on page 123, there's reference to it talks about stormwater, but there's no reference, because when you look at the, let me get the page. When you look at the form that you have to fill out, it says, how is it funded? And it says, I think it says enterprise fund, but for stormwater, there's also a fee. And I'm just kind of curious why it wouldn't be listed as well. Why it wouldn't say stormwater fee? I mean, it says it's unless that's just the mechanism is the fee and the fund is hang on, I'm trying to get that page 123.
Yes. The enterprise fund, just like the water and sewer, public utilities, you know, you have ratepayers, which the people that pay the fee are ratepayers, and it's treated as an enterprise fund.
Well, because no
tax dollars go towards it.
Well, because, and the reason I said that is because it came right after solid waste, and solid waste has, for education, has enterprise fund, comma, waste minimization fee on their page, on page 120.
Okay,
But then when you go to stormwater,
so we should add that.
it says just stormwater utility enterprise fund, unless there's a stormwater education, but I didn't see that. I think I think that's all wrapped up together. I don't know that they have a separate function. I didn't see it in the forms anyway. Just thought we might want to include that.
Okay.
And then the other question I had was on page 132. So it talks about, under item 5, which is on form, SDS Form 2, it lists formal service delivery agreements, intergovernmental contracts that we use, and this is specific to water. I'm kind of curious. We have a water supply agreement with Oconee County dated February 2014. Is that just water to the residents that live in Bogart that are in Oconee? Or is that water to Oconee County, and what does that involve? I guess I'm, new to this. I knew we had I had heard we'd had an agreement, but it's never really come up before. Kind of be curious what that agreement is.
Sure. Well, I haven't looked at the agreement in some time. My understanding is, yes, we do provide water to certain Oconee County residents, and that agreement, memorializes how that service delivery occurs. I'm almost positive we don't provide water to Oconee County for their general purposes. It's to specific meters which pay our utility for the use of that.
Could we get because I've never seen it, could we get a copy of that agreement
Certainly.
To look at? And then the same goes for the Upper Oconee Water and Sewer Authority. And that was in 96, and it goes to present, but then now that says that's a water supply agreement too. So maybe, we don't do any sewer with Oconee, do we, right now?
There's a small amount of sewer that years ago, the mayor and commission approved a contract where there was some very small amount of sewer, and this is sticking with me, 14,000 gallons per day, that serves a few residential customers in Oconee County, and they purchased that amount from us and had so many years to exercise, to use that capacity. So there is an agreement along those terms too. The Upper Oconee Water Authority has to do with Bear Creek.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, but.
And just so folks know, in that case, Oconee, Barrow, and Jackson have a treatment plant at Bear Creek that they all buy water from. We transport raw water from Bear Creek to our Beecham plant, and we treat it there, so we don't participate in the operating cost up there.
Okay.
For that.
I'd be curious to see both the water supply agreement for Oconee and whatever the sewer agreement that you're mentioning, and maybe like the thresholds, like when's that out? Like when does it run out, and what are we committed to, and yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that. Oh, the other question I had, and this is, sorry, I've got a few on page 13. It does talk about the airport, and I know there was it describes a fair amount of the services, but one of the ones that's not listed that I think there was an issue with, as the new terminal had, as we had to move people out of the old terminal and set up the new one, is the Civil Air Patrol. I know that's been an issue that's been discussed at Airport Authority, and my understanding last time I heard was that the airport has worked out. Robert, have they worked out for the Civil Air Patrol to have some space there somewhere?
Yes, we have. The existing double-wide trailer that had been utilized by Falcon and Hertz for a number of, during the construction period. We're going to end up essentially leasing that to the Civil Air Patrol. We're going to relocate it so it's in a better location instead of right there on the driveway. So, yeah, we've met with the Civil Air Patrol, and everybody, they seem to be very pleased with that arrangement.
Okay, if we could include the fact that they're covered in this, just because it is a service delivery, they're not listed at all on that. It's on page 13, so that we memorialize that. That would be nice.
And this information will be for everybody in the follow-up email, I believe, right? As far as the feedback and the memorandums of understanding or whatever.
The agreements.
The agreements. I've got Commissioner Neesmith and then Commissioner Gertz. Sharon?
That's it.
Is that it? Commissioner Neesmith?
Mr. Manager, when was the last service delivery plan update by PUD? Well, let me just tell you the reason I asked.
2015.
That, okay, because that's the one that comes up if I do a search. It's 2015.
Yes, sir. It's every 5 years, 6 years.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Gertz?
I just noticed online, because Commissioner Dickerson was just asking that intergovernmental agreement between Clark and Oconee is buried deep in the index, and it starts on page 291 of that PDF document, way down toward the bottom. And so it notes the specific streets for which water and sewer are included in the agreement, and also that volume.
Page 291?
291, deep within that document that's on our website, dated February 18th, 2014.
Okay. We good on that?
Forms. I have to go through all the, thank you.
Okay. More feedback, more questions? Okay. Pardon? Yeah, I think we'll leave that one on discussion. Is that correct, everybody, or can we put that on consent?
No, ma'am.
Not on consent. Leave it on discussion. We're ready to move on to number 8, Leisure Services Department Scholarship Voucher Program. Does anybody have any questions on that? Commissioner Link?
I want to thank Leisure Services for bringing this forward. When we adopted the new scholarship program and basically assured that there were no full scholarships available anymore, I was a little bit concerned about that and asked them to come up with this voucher program, which I hope will help folks who truly can't afford to pay even a small amount for some of these summer camps. That it will help them to, be able to have their kids in camp and also have a real value to that camp. The problem was folks were signing up for camps, and because they qualified for full scholarships, they were signing them up for a whole bunch of camps, and then the kids weren't going, and they were taking the place of kids that could have been going. So this assures that there is a real value to signing up to that camp, and that kids that truly can't afford it can still go. We talked about grants or donors. Have they come up with any kind of donor program? Or I know we have, a restructured leisure services and a dedicated marketing person. Is there a program to really market that donor program so folks like me who don't have children, can possibly throw in some money and see that some of these kids can get to camp?
I think that'll be a byproduct of this agenda item right here, is that'll kind of stimulate that activity.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the goals of this, is to set up that fund with the community foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the community foundation outreach materials and leisure services, we will, would work together in order to get word out in the community to encourage that to happen.
Okay. Well, I look
So
forward
no,
to that.
I mean, the answer is no, it hasn't happened necessarily yet, but it will
Okay.
going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Would we like to go ahead and put that on consent agenda?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. Okay. Excellent. So 8 goes on consent. Is that the only one, I think, that we added? Okay, so now we'll receive staff reports on recommendations from the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission, another citizen-appointed committee that does a lot of great work for us. A public hearing is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, April 3rd. That's when public input would occur on item number 9 and number 10.
I think it's under there somewhere.
It just knows.
Okay, Brad.
Okay,
Carry
thank
on.
you.
Two items for you this evening. First is a request to rezone from an employment office designation with an old conditional use on it to a commercial general plan development at 4300 Atlanta Highway. Purpose is to develop a new car dealership on a 6-acre portion that is being subdivided out of a 24.5-acre tract. As I said, auto sales under the PD, binding application reports and plans if approved, and there are some waivers that are being requested in conjunction with this proposal. Specifically, and they're in detail in your staff report, but there are some requirements of the landscaping ordinance with regard to trees, both inside of the sales area lot as well as some of the buffer plantings that they're asking to have waived. They're also asking to increase allowable outdoor lighting standards, and these are lighting standards for outdoor display, not for standard parking lot, from 14-foot candles to 23-foot candles. You see the subject property here, just to the left of the existing Ford dealership. Currently zoned EO, wanting to zone to CG with a PD, which is compatible certainly with property on the south side of Atlanta Highway and to the east. Existing conditions. And then proposed site plan. Just to give you a little bit of background with it, this is CarMax. CarMax operates a little bit differently than some of the other car dealerships in that it completely separates its customer and employee type parking from the sales lot, and then the sales lot is actually fenced and gated. So when you enter in off of Atlanta Highway, this is the sales lot area, and you can't drive your car in there. They will bring the cars out to you, but you would actually, as a customer, you park in this area. They are proposing to meet all of our standards with regard to trees and the 6-foot candle requirement for a parking lot in that area. Only in the area where the auto display is where they're asking for the waiver. Here's the tree management plan showing, and again, you can see the proposed landscaping within the customer parking area, but the other area, which is sales lot, still by ordinance is required to have tree islands within it, although they are allowed to be small trees. They don't have to be the larger shade trees, but are required by code, and that is one of the waivers they're asking for. A couple of elevations of what it will look like. And the Planning Commission recommendation is to approve the PD, but they are adding conditions which effectively are not supporting the waivers that were being asked for with regard to the lighting increases, the tree management plan standards, and landscape screening. And then the fourth being just a minor correction, which I think the applicant has already made. And that concludes the staff report.
Commissioner Neesmith, this is in your district. Do you
Yes,
have some
ma'am.
feedback for us?
Yes, and we are glad to see this development. CarMax is welcome on the west side. This will be a good addition to what's becoming Car Row. The issue of lighting is a tricky one because we already have a couple of dealers who have established themselves since our lighting ordinance was put in place. They did not ask and did not receive waivers. They are compliant with the 14, correct me if I'm wrong about this, with the 14-foot candle rule. They also are compliant with the tree rule in their storage parking lot or storage lots. So I have a difficult time doing anything other than going along with the Planning Commission recommendations unless we intend to change those ordinances and let these other car lots upgrade those lights. So I'm gonna support this petition as the Planning Commission has recommended it.
Okay. Other questions for Brad or details from the Commission? Go ahead.
And I apologize, I didn't look at this in a whole bunch of detail, but I'm kind of curious. I mean, part of the reason we have a tree ordinance is, we want to, have trees, and they have a lot of benefits. But if trees are being recommended in an area where people aren't really going to be parking and benefiting, I mean, am I understanding that the trees that they're asking for a waiver is in an area that is really just more for display, you know, for having their, parking their cars? I mean, is there, if I'm understanding that correctly, couldn't we just ask they put the trees somewhere else on the property and make up the difference?
Mayor Pro Tem, can I address that?
Sure.
The purpose, one of the purposes of the tree ordinance is to shade asphalt, to prevent or minimize or mitigate the heat absorption from the sun into asphalt. And so that's the purpose of this tree, that's the main purpose of trees in parking lots, is to shade the asphalt and mitigate the heat island that's formed when the city heats up in the summertime because of all the asphalt. So that's why they're required in parking lots.
And it's not just a pure storage area. I mean, the way if you've been to the Toyota dealership, it functions similar in that you can't go there and drive your car up and down the rows where the cars are on display and get out when you see one you like. You park and you walk into the area. So the area where the cars are being displayed is still required to have trees. There is still a pedestrian environment there. If you're shopping for a car, you will be in that area where they're not wanting to put any trees, where the Planning Commission is recommending they do.
And so in that respect, it is pedestrian, and then what you're saying is if you found one you liked, a worker would come with the key and what, bring it out?
My understanding, yes, it's my understanding they would bring the car, if you wanted to test drive it, they would bring it through the gate to a point here where you would then receive it and take a test drive.
Gotcha. And so then when you're talking to the salesman out there, that would also be a comfort zone by the shade? Because you're saying the
Yes.
transaction, the merchandise is out there, and essentially the commission's saying it should also be shaded.
Yes.
More questions? Okay.
Okay. Then we have one text amendment. This one is coming to you from staff. It's coming quickly to you because of an unexpected area of our ordinance that with the resignation of our recent District 2 Commissioner, we realized that under our demolition review ordinance, there is nobody to review and/or approve or hold a demo review under the ordinance. So we have prepared this and brought it to you, and effectively what it says is that in the case of an absence in a commission seat, the mayor will serve in the official capacity until such time that that seat is replaced. We've also added, since we have it in front of you, a couple of just clerical error or clerical clarifications of the language, but the one big change that we have always kind of struggled with a little bit, it's not in the ordinance, but we feel like it should be, is there is not currently a time limit on this demolition review process. So if you have one sent to you, it goes through the process, you choose to release it, or it runs its full course of 90 days and then expires, which gives them the ability to pull a demo permit. If they do not pull a demo permit, they have that clearance to then go ahead and pull one at any point in the future. And as we have, in 5 years is where we have cutoffs with special use permits. I mean, that's kind of something within our ordinance that is already there. Commission seats change, neighbors change, and so what we're asking for you to consider is to allow us to place a 5-year limitation on the demolition review status that would give them that period of time in which to pull a demo permit. After 5 years, if it is not pulled at any point in the future, they would have to go back through the process with the commissioner in the seat at the time and be presented to the neighborhood.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Gertz?
I'm curious, Brad, have you had some lengthy windows between filing of the permit and either not actually demolishing the structure at all, or when the structure was demolished being 3 years post-review?
Rick would absolutely know because he's told me about this. I think there may have been one or two out there that actually never pulled a permit. They went through the process, but then conditions changed and the demo permit was never pulled. But at some point down the road, if they wanted to come in and get it done, they could.
They'd be eligible.
And then if, you're a new commissioner in the area and you want to know why I didn't receive the demo permit, our answer is, well, there was one issued 8 years ago. And
the surrounding context of the neighborhood might have changed in that window of time.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrod and Link?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So I have two quick questions. I understand the logic of the 5 years in terms of that's also the time period for special use permits to expire. On the other hand, 5 years is a long time to let a piece of property that, at least some of these probably do need to be demolished. I know there's an aspect in here that they can be demolished, by us, I guess, if they're dangerous or pose a hazard, but I'm not sure that I necessarily want a piece of property that needs to be demolished sitting around for 5 years.
Right.
So I don't know whether 5 years is the right period, and I would certainly be interested in hearing from my colleagues their opinions on this. The other question I had, and this is really more for our attorney, given that there is a request from District 2 as we speak, is there a way to fast-track this, or do we just have to wait till the voting meeting to approve it?
We have to wait for the voting meeting because we have advertising requirements and all that in the process part of our zoning ordinance.
Okay. And actually, in the case of the one that is currently in District 2 now, from a calendar standpoint, all of these, when they come to you, they are in place by ordinance for 25 days without any action required. You will approve this on, I think, day 22 of that process, which will then be handed off. So, and we have already let the applicant know.
Commissioner Lee?
I had a question, a concern about the 5 years too. Like, you say the logic behind that was because that's the same amount of time for a special use permit. Did the Planning Commission have any further discussion about the appropriateness of 5 years versus 3 years, or?
No, I don't think the Planning Commission did. We did internally from a staff standpoint. I mean, we were everywhere from a year to 5.
Yeah.
And we chose the conservative number because it was consistent with another deadline time period within the ordinance. I don't know that there's any reason why you as a commission couldn't modify that time and make it shorter. I would hate to get into a cycle, of maybe 2 years. We talked about a year. I mean, I think things could happen from a standpoint of, from the time the 90 days expires, conditions change. If it's 12 months, then do you really want it again in 12 months? Is that too short of a time period? Those were the discussions we had internally at staff level, and we landed on 5. But, I think that would be at the discretion of this group if they wanted to change it.
Yeah. Well, 5 is beyond the term of a commissioner, so if they switched over, the problem that you talked about could still happen. I don't know. I'm mulling it over in my head as to whether shorter is better or longer is better, quite frankly. Depends on the property. Yeah.
Well, I think it's good that you added that in while this ordinance was in front of us for the other important reason. So I've got Neesmith, Dickerson, and Harrod. Dickerson and Harrison. Harrod. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I have a problem with the 5 years too, and it's for reasons that haven't been mentioned yet. One is that there would be circumstances where that building is going to be demolished in this neighborhood, is going to put a pall on that neighborhood. It could actually affect that neighborhood and the progression of that neighborhood if that thing is going to be demolished and it isn't. It could be very negative. So I would say 18 months. I think 18 months is a good number. Maybe a year is too short, 2 years is too long. Consider 18 months. And then I have something that Commissioner Harrod usually talks about, and that's language. In item 2, well, it says a site plan or floor plan indicating the structure or portions is therefore effective. Do you mean or a floor plan, or do you mean and a floor plan?
I think we mean or, because if it is a full demolition, I don't know that there's a reason for us to have a site plan included if the whole house is coming down. If it is only a sunroom, I think that's why we said or.
But it doesn't say that. It says a site plan or floor plan, and it doesn't say what is appropriate. So if you want a floor plan and I give you a site plan, you're gonna have to take it. If you want a site plan and I give you a floor plan, I've met the letter of the law. So maybe you need to be explicit about when each of those is required.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So would it be a site plan indicating the structures or floor plan
Well,
for portions
I
thereof?
don't want to write it here. I think Brad can write it and bring it back to us with what he means to say. Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, Commissioner, you're done. Commissioner Dickerson?
Well, I was just kind of curious, building inspection issues permits, right? How long do they, once the building inspection, issues a building permit, how long does that person have to take action? Is it forever, or is there a time limit?
And you've led right into the point I was wanting to make, so thank you for this question. From the time that the building inspection department issues the demolition permit, it's typically 6 months that something has to take place or it becomes void at that point. But what I want to make sure is clear is that the approval by a commissioner of the demolition review application or the completion of the 90-day period and no actions taken in no way obligates the property owner to have to take down a building at that point. Right. And I don't think y'all think that, no. But so the difference with it is that if we gave it a 1 year or a 5 year time period and it goes through and it gets approved, yeah, it can still sit there, and we have no authority under the fact that we've got a demo review application that's been processed to expedite a demolition based on property conditions. But it takes some of the stigma away from the neighborhood knowing that this could come down at any time under the time period.
Commissioner Herod is next.
Yeah, let me
If
follow
he
up.
wants to follow up on that, and then I'll go up there.
Yeah, so that's a different kettle of worms there. If they've applied for the demolition permit and the 90 days has expired or the commissioner said fine, and then they don't pull a permit, can they pull it? They can pull a permit at any time after that.
Now they can.
Yes. So this 5 years begins not when they pull the permit, but when
5 years would be from the time that it is released.
When it's released.
And keep in mind, and I should have probably gone back and explained this one further too, two separate processes here, and this is by design to protect us from any vested rights claim. What you receive is paperwork that they have submitted to us that is a demolition review application. And that application has to be approved and or expire before they have a right to go across the hall and apply for a demolition permit.
Right.
Two totally separate. The issuance of the demolition permit itself, and then a moratorium comes along, they've got a vested right to continue on with that permit. They do not have any vested right, because all you're doing by holding for 90 days is not giving them the right to walk across the hall and pull a demolition permit, right, which is subject to the 6 month time period.
Oh, the demolition permit has a 6 month, okay. So
once they walk across the hall and get it.
So we're giving them some period of time, a year, 18 months, 5 years, to pull the permit.
Whatever that time period ends up being, right, that's the amount of time they've got to walk in the building.
And they have 6 months to do it.
And pull a permit to take down the property administratively without any further action.
Okay.
Right now, once the 90 days were to expire on a property that you really, really like, but there's really no interest in pursuing a historic district, at that point, that property is clear in perpetuity unless the ordinance changes, right, to walk in and pull a demolition permit. There is no expiration.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Herod.
Thank you, Commissioner Herod.
Thanks. Well, that does clarify some things. I mean, I don't know what the Goldilocks number is. You know, a little bit too much, a little bit too less, or just what's right. Just 5 years just seems like a long time to me to have something hanging around. You know, I know that special use permit lasts for 5 years. On the other hand, we have other time periods for other types of things. If you get a rezoning denied, you have to wait a year before you can come back. So I agree with Commissioner Link. I don't know whether it's a year or 18 months. I don't know what it is, but I think 5 years is too long.
Commissioner Dickerson.
I just want clarification. So did you say once it is released, they have 6 months to get the to pull it? No.
Once the review is released, that whether you release it immediately to tear down, or whether you require them to wait the 90 days, and at that point it's released by default. From that point, they can come in and pull it and apply for and receive a demolition permit to take down the house at any point in the future.
Okay.
Once they have been issued that demolition permit from the inspection department to remove the structure, they have 6 months
Okay.
to have activity on the property.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, I mean, I agree, 5 years is too long. I'm not quite sure what the number is, but I'm leaning towards more like a year to 18 months too, at minimum.
And if it may be easiest, if there is a decision between now and the voting meeting on what the right time is, there will be a commission-defined option. Whoever proposes that commission-defined option, I can give you the requested clarification of that other sentence to include
I'd
in
be
your
happy to
option.
do that. You guys can communicate with me what your wishes are.
Okay, all right, good discussion. Are we done here?
We're done here.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.